Hi, welcome to Day 6 of International Nature Journaling Week. Today is all about paying attention to the parts of the natural cycles that are more quiet and hidden. Things like decay and decomposition, or the resting phases like hibernation, diapause, senescence. Today you can use your nature journal to look for examples of these phases that you might not have noticed before, or maybe you've even avoided them. Sometimes coming across things like death or decomposition in nature can be upsetting, and sometimes it's helpful to use our nature journal to explore and process those feelings. Even if you're in a full summer or spring situation like this beautiful, vibrant forest here, there's decay and decomposition taking place. And if you take these prompts with you throughout the year, you might be able to explore what happens during hibernation in a winter season. These phases often take place underground. Behind me, leaves are turning into soil. Mushrooms are doing their mushroomy thing underground before they pop up their fruiting bodies. And these are really interesting topics to explore with your nature journal.
Hi, my name's Amy Szymanski, and I live in the beautiful Western Massachusetts in Pioneer Valley. And I've spent the last 2 years nature journaling my yard and getting to know it more intimately. And one of my favorite ways to do that is to study the cycles that I see in plant life and animal happenings. And the one that I want to share with you today is a special plant that grows in the northeastern part of the country. And this green beauty down here is the skunk cabbage. So when I first saw the skunk cabbage, I made an entry in my journal. It was the middle of February. I went back at the beginning of March, and one of those had started developing into this hood shape. Then I went back at the end of March and noticed that the hood structure had already started to darken and look like it was decomposing a little bit. You can see here where I captured some of the decay. In the middle of April, that the hood structure was completely gone. It had dried up and was now becoming soil. And the leaves of the cabbage were really starting to grow and take over. Finally, I went back towards the end of April and captured a small landscape. So returning to the same plant and the same spot throughout the course of about 2 or 3 months, I was really able to get to know this skunk cabbage much better than I have before. The moments where I get to really intimately get to know something, that's when I feel most connected to nature. So good luck with your nature journaling, and I hope you find some amazing, interesting cycles to experience.
Hello, my name is Walt Mahosky, and I live in Schenectady, New York. I thought I'd take this opportunity during International Nature Journaling Week to speak on one of the topic themes of decay and decomposition. For the past several years, I've had a little ongoing relationship with the gray squirrels that live in my yard. And what they do is they like to eat the black walnuts that grow on a tree in the median in the middle of my street. And what they do is they have to get through the tough husk on the outside of the walnut, which is no easy task. And then they spend all day gnawing through the thick, hard shells of the black walnuts. And then they leave these beautiful little sculptures behind, which normally would be left on the ground to decay and rot and become part of the earth. But instead, I accept them as little gifts from the squirrels, as these little sculptures that they make. And they're quite lovely as interesting little art objects in and of themselves. And I spent a great deal of time recording and observing these things, of course, in my nature journal. I work primarily in pen and ink, black ink on white paper. So these little objects that have reached the end of, well, their useful natural lives have actually served as a catalyst for me to learn more about the trees on which they grow. For me, the most fascinating part of nature journaling is learning to observe and see the things that so many times we'd normally walk over or step over or ignore or not even see. And these observations become a way for us to connect with and learn more about the natural world in which we are a part of. So I hope this week, during International Nature Journaling Week, you all get a chance to get out there into your local nature, whether it be in your own backyard or on the trails, in the mountains, in the deserts. And I hope you have fun, and good luck to you.
Hi, I'm Jen Boyd, and I teach environmental science in Southern California. I started nature journaling 2 years ago, and I have incorporated it into my classes now. I believe it's really helped my students' social and emotional well-being as well as my own. So my example of a cycle today is this freesia, and I journaled this at my parents' house. And the cool thing I noticed about it is that when it first blooms, it's this flower at first that blooms, but it's also the first one to die and to kind of wither away. And the reason why I thought this reminded me of my family was because I think about my kids, the ones who will come after me, and all the people who came before me. And it reminds me of a cycle, that we are nature, we are part of nature, and that we are part of the cycle of life as well. And I think it also helps me, when I journaled this flower, the idea of acceptance. That, nature doesn't fight the changes, it accepts the changes. And as humans, sometimes I think we feel like we are above the laws of nature and that we can just keep things the way we want it and not accept change. But that's just not true. So accepting change is what I learned from this freesia. Thank you.
Some of my favorite things are decomposers. They're nature's recyclers. What exactly is going on here? How does this process work? How many decomposers can I find in just my backyard? What is a decomposer anyway?
Hi, my name is Deborah Kahn, and I am so excited to be here with you for the International Nature Journaling Week. I'm going to be talking about decay and decomposition. This might be something that you have included in your journals before, but a lot of times people kind of shy away from this. I think we've learned as we've grown up that, oh, that's yucky, you shouldn't look at it. And we have those other messages in our head. But trust me, it's really fascinating, and it's an important part of the life cycle of plants and animals. First, I'm going to share with you a page that I did in my compost, about my compost bin, and it's called Micro Hike. And I laid out a grid in my compost bin and decided that I didn't want to just look at what was on top, but I wanted to dig down in each of those areas. So I drew the grid on my page, and then I chose one of them one of the layers, layer number 2, to go into more detail. It was simply fascinating. I was so surprised at the different critters that were in there, from slugs to roly-poly bugs to just all sorts of things that were in the different layers. And it was fascinating that each layer had a different type of decomposer there. And so I learned so much from that, and I have a lot more respect now for those critters that are helping me out in my compost bin. The next thing I wanted to share with you is this page, and it's called Life Goes On. I have a good friend who is a biologist. His name is Ken, and he knows that I'm really interested in those types of things, and I do nature journaling. He sent me this piece of wood or branch from a dead oak tree, and at the time the colors were more brilliant and you could see them better. Now it's dehydrated out a little bit, but I took that piece of oak and I looked at all the different things that were on it, from a red fungi to a lichen. There was mycelium in there. Again, I used my magnifying glasses and loupes and other magnifiers to get a closer look at it. It really is fascinating. I hope you have a chance to do something like that. The next thing that I wanted to share with you is a page that is from my nature journal, and if you'll notice, it's all muddy and brown, and there's also a little insert up at the top that shows the debris from a mud flow. And when we had out here in California, we were having lots of mudslides, etc. And this was a favorite hike for us, and the only thing that was on the ground were these raccoon tracks and then the debris in the background. We couldn't even get by to hike where we were at. Everything just was brown. There weren't a lot of other colors there. I want to show you though what it was like before this devastation. So it isn't always that plants just die or animals just die from natural causes, but often other things in nature can cause them to die and decompose. So that's where the mudslides and all the rain, it's the overflowing, flooding streams, etc. We're finding, or not finding, but harming the stream bed. I really am looking forward to going back and seeing what it looks like now, several months later. Here also is a different type of perspective on decay and decomposition. This is a picture of Leland cypress that were in my backyard, and my husband and I had planted them 26 years ago, and they were becoming diseased, and it took about 3 years, and I finally decided that I really had to do something about them. I had nature journaled the trees before, and with this one, this was my final goodbye to the trees, and it really was something that touched my heart. I was grieving them. I was grieving the fact that my husband was gone because we had planted these together. And so what I did to help me process that was each day I drew a picture of how far the men cutting down the tree had gotten. And so you can see that progression there. And what I didn't put in here is that they went into the wood chipper, and then they are going to be mulch at other places. So again, that's another example that it's not just the moldy orange in the refrigerator or the moldy tomato, but it's really going on. Decay and decomposition is really going on all around us. I was looking for another picture. Oh, there it is for you. In this one, I wanted to show you the process of how this lion's mane plant developed, starting with the seeds and then going through until there was just the empty shell of the center of the lion's mane left. And there were seeds in this, so we know what's going to happen next, or hopefully happen next, is that a new generation of plants will grow and develop. The last thing that I wanted to share with you was a page that I've done, or I did, I should say, about a dove. And this dove and his mate were in my backyard all the time. And then suddenly one day they weren't together. It was just him. And he was cooing and cawing and crying. I mean, you could tell it was just mournfully. And he'd go from tree to tree, from telephone to telephone pole, calling for his mate. Well, I found a couple of feathers. And so I knew what had happened. And my heart just went out to him. I also was still in that grieving process at the time. And so we kind of joined together. I kind of joined together with him in that mourning process. Then suddenly I noticed that the scrub jays were picking up grasses and twigs and flying into the trees. And it just made my heart swell that I knew they were making a nest. And even though this life of this dove had been lost, other life is beginning and will soon be here. So that's what I take with me when I think of that, or that's one of the things besides just the sciencey type things, is that we do have this cycle of life that we're all a part of, and doing the nature journaling can help us think about that and just appreciate it as much as we do life itself. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully someday maybe we could even meet in person.
Today, we invite you to be curious about these quieter, more hidden parts of the life cycle. There can be such interesting patterns in something like a decaying piece of wood. And throughout the year, depending on where you live, you might have quieter seasons, like a dry season where plants go into senescence, or a winter season where animals hibernate. Enjoy today's theme, and we look forward to seeing what you come up with.